mystery, so welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing a full review on the entire Wayward Pines trilogy by Blake Crouch. It consists of Pines, which I don't currently have with me. The second book is called Wayward, and book 3 is The Last Town. I know that there's a series based on these books, but I haven't seen that one yet, so I don't know how it compares. I can't really talk about that, but I will talk about the books today because honestly, this series has pretty quickly become my maybe favorite series ever. I don't know. I'm very hesitant to talk about favorites in general because it constantly changes. Regardless of any of that, I don't think I will ever read a series again that was this well done, that was this satisfying, and honestly, I don't know, just like I don't have that many gripes with it. I don't, which is very rare. So anyway, let's talk about these books in a little bit more of a coherent order, I guess. So book 1, Pines, follows this FBI agent called Ethan Burke, who gets the assignment to go to a town called Wayward Pines, where 2 other FBI agents have recently disappeared. One of them was his former partner, Kate, so he willingly obliges, obviously. He's very adamant to find out what happened to them. And when he gets there, he gets into a car accident and wakes up in the town with no memory at first of who he is. He has no personal belongings with him, and he can't seem to get his hands on them. Ethan then starts to like wander around the town, talking to a few townspeople and trying to get his bearings, trying to talk to the sheriff of the town, and he slowly but surely realizes that something is very, very off about the town. The people don't seem to really want to help him. They're all very suspicious of him, and he finds that whenever he tries to make contact with anyone outside of the town, such as his wife and son or his boss at the FBI, he can't really get through to them. And he begins to question if he will ever actually be able to leave the town again. That is the premise, and I honestly don't want to say too much about the plot itself because it's very, very important not to know too much. Because this entire first book, I was on the edge of my seat, constantly worrying, constantly thinking like, oh my god, what is happening? What is up? What are they doing? What are they doing? What are they thinking? What could be possibly going on? Like, you just like are so involved in the story, and if you know what's going on, then you're missing out on that. So again, I won't say too much more on the plot. I will just say that it is really, really, really well done. I think something that is very difficult with these types of mysteries, or in general, like any kind of mystery that authors try to create in books, is that there's this crucial question of like when to reveal what. I think that this book series manages to do a really good job of like revealing things at the perfect pace and just building suspense so well that by the end of it, you're literally ready to claw your eyes out because you just like need to know what's going on. This heavy element of suspense as to what is going on in this town is the reason why I was not sure how I was gonna feel about the sequels. So we do find out what's happening in this town by the end of book 1, and then you feel like you have 2 more books to go without this element of suspense, and you're like, what is gonna happen? What could possibly measure up to this? Like, what could possibly keep up with this feeling that I had in book 1? And I was so pleasantly surprised by the tension and the stakes and everything else in the sequels that was still there, still just as high, still just as important, even though I already knew what was going on. Wayward in particular, I really enjoyed. Obviously, following the events of the first book, Ethan has also figured out what is going on in the town, and he's just working with that knowledge now. And again, what's so good about this series is that behind this one major mystery, there's so many more mysteries that you still haven't figured out and that Ethan still hasn't figured out. So I love this like clean and seamless transition almost from book 1 to book 2, where it's just like, oh yes, this mystery is lifted, but there's so much more that we still don't know, and that's still gonna keep you guessing and like thinking about this constantly. Despite everything, I feel like the characters still play a huge part in the series. It's not particularly a character-driven book, and there's not a huge amount of character development, but still you can just kind of relate to all of them knowing their situation, and you're just like rooting for them to do well. In particular, Ethan, I really like his character. I really like seeing this world through his eyes, and what I most loved about him, honestly, is that he didn't do any of the stupid things many characters in thrillers and horror novels and mysteries and whatnot do. Because they create cheap drama and they create cheap tension, and it's like, oh, this guy is just an idiot, and he goes in there into this house like not knowing anything, and he doesn't take any precautions and stuff like that. And all of that was just alleviated by the fact that he's a trained FBI agent. Like, he knows stuff. He's not stupid. And so I constantly kept thinking like, yes, thank you for second guessing that, and thank you for actually turning on your brain before you go and do anything, because he didn't do these frustrating things that literally make me yell out loud in other books. And then with The Last Town, I feel like we got the perfect, close to perfect, conclusion to the series. I will say that overall, in terms of plot, this book is the weakest. There is the least amount of stuff happening. It feels a little bit contrived to extend the length of the series, just a little bit. I feel like it could have been shortened down altogether to a duology and it still would have worked just fine. But still, I value this book for what it did and for the place that it had in the series. I've said this before, but to me the perfect conclusion to a story that is so heavily shrouded in mystery is if we know a good amount of what's going on, but if there's still like a smidgen of stuff that is kept in the dark, so that the allure of the unknown isn't completely lost. I like that the end is kept somewhat open-ended, and that we can now fill that space with all of our own ideas and guesses and like conspiracy theories and whatnot. And I love the way that it concluded. I honestly think that there could be sequels to this even, but I think it's one of those cases where it's like, a part of me wants to know what happens next, and a part of me is just fine not knowing, because I feel like whatever it is going to be is not going to live up to this. So let's leave it at the 3 books, you know? As many other authors should have done, let's leave it at the 3 books. And I don't think that Blake Crouch has any plans on continuing the series, so it's a moot point anyway. Overall, I rated books 1 and 2 5 stars, and I rated book 3 4 stars for the reasons that I just mentioned. I'm just so glad that I went ahead and read the series, that I dove in head first, not knowing too much about it. Again, this is how I recommend you read it as well, and I hope you enjoyed too. And yeah, for now we have reached the end of the spoiler-free portion of this video. So if you have not read the series, then please click out. Thank you for watching, and come back when you've read the book so we can theorize together. I just like want to talk about a few questions that I still have for the series that I wish it had kind of answered, and a few inconsistencies that I just like want to talk about. I don't know, you know how when you're like annoyed at something in a book that you feel like isn't done perfectly, then you just like need to rant about it? That's what I'm here for. I want to know these things, and I want to know if you want to know them too. So let's talk about them. The first thing is that I wish we had known more about the suspension situation in general. Like, how does the science work? I love like sci-fi, and I love when the science is at least a little bit explained, so I just like want to know. I get that it would have meant a lot more like work on the author's part, so I just like didn't think about it, but I just like wanted to know. Particularly, I want to know how people can wake themselves up out of suspension. Logically, that has to have happened when they first started Wayward Pines, like the 2,000 years in the future, whatever, because there weren't people that had like lived in the mountain, and like, you know how it sometimes happens in like spaceship stories where people get put into suspension on a spaceship and they have this crew that just lives there, and like they procreate and whatever, and like they live there for 2,000 years. Now obviously not the same people, but like the group of people that like procreate and whatever, they have like generations of people living there, taking care of the people in suspension and waking them up when they reach the planet that they wanted to go to. In this case, as far as I could tell, that wasn't what happened. They didn't have people living in the mountain for 2,000 years taking care of the people in suspension, or at least to have someone there that would wake them up when the time came. So did they set a timer on the capsules? But then who would wake up first? That must be super fucking disorientating to be like, here I am, the first human from like the year 2000 in the year 4000. The next thing isn't so much an inconsistency, it's just like a question I have, like, why did he do that? And it's like, why did Pilcher trust Ethan in book 2? Like, honestly, he gave him such a long leash. He didn't tell him off for anything. He literally had free reign and he just trusted him, and like, obviously he betrayed him. Like, dude, have you not been around for book 1 when he constantly defied you and would not believe in what you believe? Like, I don't even know. Maybe he was just too much of a megalomaniac to like even conceive of someone potentially betraying him. But then Alyssa clearly did, so why not Ethan? I feel like if your own daughter betrays you, this random dude who has proven before that he's not on board with what you're doing is like not that, you know, wild of an assumption. Another question of more of like a general basic nature, I guess, is like, what on earth is the point of this entire experiment except to make the human race survive? But what is the point? Because Pilcher kept saying in the books like, oh, you would have been long dead by now, and I'm like, yeah, by natural causes. It's not like the like, I don't know, takeover of the Abbeys was like imminent or whatever, and they would have all died horrible deaths if he hadn't saved them. They would just have lived out their lives, and their children would have lived out their lives, and their children probably too, and then eventually the very same people that like are related to them, like their own descendants, would have evolved into Abbeys. Like, that's just what would have happened, right? Like, why does that so necessarily affect these people directly that have now been taken, ripped out of their lives, and like get to live 2,000 years in the future? Like, what's the point? Especially because, honestly, I feel like, I know that the Abbeys kind of evolved because of, like, I guess, like, pollution and, like, you know, things that we did to the planet. I think that that's what happened. But who is to say that that's not what's going to happen eventually to the humans now in the year 4000? Evolution is a thing. It just is. So, yeah, maybe they skipped 2,000 years of history, but then what if they just like evolve into something else again in the future? Like, what was the thought process behind that? Like, you can't outrun evolution if it's going to happen. I mean, I guess they tried, because at the end of the book they're like, well, fuck this century, we're going to another one. But I don't see the point. I mean, I see the point in what Ethan did, because he literally had no other option. I don't see the point in what Pilcher did, because why? If the human race is destined to die out, it is going to die out, no matter what the fuck you do. Like, how are you gonna force it to survive? I don't know. I mean, this is maybe going too far, but this is just questions that I have genuinely, like, been thinking about. And finally, something that has probably bothered me the most out of this entire thing is, like, they have lived in Wayward Pines for 14 years. Pilcher has been there, and these people have been there for 14 years. In that time, their entire interactions with the Abbeys have been killing them, putting them in cages, and then doing nothing with them in the cages. Like, they have Margaret. I kept thinking Margaret was gonna be an important part of the story, because they literally could have used that. I mean, she kind of is in the end, but they could have sort of, I don't know, done something more with her than just like do random tests. Like, I don't know. I'm just baffled at the lack of communication attempts with the Abbeys. I understand that if like a monster with like, I don't know, 100 kilos is running at you, you don't necessarily immediately think of like, oh, this could be a friend. But at the same time, like, why did they not ever try to like coexist in one way or another? Like, how? Why? I mean, potentially that's something that Ethan eventually set into motion, but I just wanna know why it didn't happen in the 14 years, or like why they didn't at least try something with the Abbeys that they had in their cages, like communicate with them, like I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a good idea to immediately kill everything you see and then be like, oh, they're all so bad. But it's just like, I keep thinking of like Arrival, the movie. They literally attempt and succeed at talking to freaking aliens. Why can't you talk to the very thing that your own species has evolved into? Like, I guess it just kind of feels like a missed plot point to me. I feel like the second half of the review is almost longer than the first. I'm sorry, but I just had some thoughts that I wanted to share. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about the series. Please don't be too specific on spoilery things. You can always message me on Twitter or Goodreads or whatever if you want to talk about more spoilery things. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you very soon with another video, and until then, have a lovely week. Bye!